Welcome to Empowered Within, a soul-quenching, transformational podcast that will set your soul on fire through candid and inspiring conversations. Leading experts, celebrities, healers, and I share our journeys of how we've overcome challenges to living an empowered life from within. I'm your host, Jennifer Pilates. Welcome to another episode of Empowered Within. Hi there, and welcome to the show. I am honored to have with us today's guest, Alan Weiser. Alan is a clinical psychologist who has worked in the public sector, mental health institutions for many years, becoming an expert at bringing people together in solving problems. He founded New Options, Inc. in 2002 to help people with chronic pain learn to fully engage in recovery. Alan's early experiences have made him unusually gifted and qualified to lead others in the process of overcoming major challenges, pursuing self-discovery, and seeking inspiration and innate potential. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Oh, I'm so honored to have you here. You have an incredible journey that started when you were 12 years old. Will you share that story with us, that journey as to how your life really took a turn there and brought you to where you are today?
Sure. It's really symbolic of the work that I do. That'll become more obvious as we speak. So picture the situation. I'm a headstrong kid. I'm one of those children that wanted to figure things out for himself. So at 12 and a half, I decided I want to do trick diving on the diving board. And the first thing I'm going to do is a backflip, right? But I'm going to figure out how to do it myself. I'm not going to take lessons. So I did find out something. When you do a backflip on a diving board, did you know you're supposed to dive out, not straight up?
I did not know that.
Yes, when you do it straight up, which is what I did, you come down on the board.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
No, and that's what happened. I hit the board, broke my neck in two places. And, was taken to the hospital. They put me in a cast. I knew I had a broken neck, right? But picture the scenario, right? I'm a confident kid. I'm relatively intelligent. I'm a risk taker. And then this happens. This is then compounded, right? You can imagine how I might have been feeling and how frightened I was probably at the moment. The doctor comes in my room for the first time and literally says this. He says, if you don't die and you're not paralyzed, you will be crippled for the rest of your life.
Though I can't believe a doctor said that to you at 12.
Well, trust me, in the work I do, you'd be surprised what doctors say that you couldn't believe they say.
Wow.
And he did. He did. And that was devastating. But this is the lesson learned that translates into the work I do at this point. I wasn't going to surface how I was reacting. I just wanted out of there. They kept me in the hospital over a month. They wanted me there longer. I just made such a fuss. They had to send me home. Then I spent a year on my back, on a bed, not allowed to get out of bed or even get up, right? For a year with a brace on. When I eventually was able to get the brace off and get out of bed, it took me months to be able to walk normally because I was so atrophied. But the entire time I'm going through all of this, tutors coming from school, this is, right going into middle school. If you talked to me, I would have been cracking jokes. There's no way anybody knew how I felt about what was going on or how I reacted to it. And I didn't allow myself to know. I just kept persevering. So eventually I get past that, but they told me I was fragile. So no risk taking, no sports. It completely altered my life. And worse than that, I go from being a good student to getting close to failing in high school. Now, here's part of the point that we'll talk about. I never understood why that happened, except if you'd asked me, I would have said, I'm not that smart. So I didn't do well in high school. Big deal, right? In high school, I would have told you that I wasn't smart as a way of explaining the grades. The part I'd forgotten that didn't surface until about 4 years ago in a session with a patient when I was relating the story was the thought I had when the doctor walked into the room. When he said what he said, the first thought I had, which I had buried instantly, was stupid, stupid, stupid. Look what you did. People don't understand that when you're injured, when things happen, when you have medical problems, when you have other life-shocking events, that it alters everything. I'm introduced to mortality at 12 and a half, introduced to vulnerability at 12 and a half, and my reaction to that was to deny all of it for years. Now, you might ask, what did I do to deal with the physical challenge? By the time I got to college, I go, you know what? I can't live this way. And if I'm going to have to go down, it's on my terms, not what the doctor said. Now, that could have been really foolish. Right? It's not like I didn't respect them, but what do you think I did to challenge the idea that I was fragile?
Oh my God. Tell me you did not play football.
No, didn't do that, but I wasn't particularly interested. No, I did something a bit more direct. I signed up for judo and trampoline.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, you've seen judo, you know what it looks like.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I can tell you, I remember the first throw with my instructor. I'm flying through the air and thinking to myself, you're either done or maybe not. But I had no regrets. Right? Bottom line is, I was fine. I've done martial arts for over 50 years. Ironically, I find out only about 5 or 6 years ago when I'm working with a chiropractor who does x-rays of my neck for the first time in a long time. And he knew what happened. And he goes, I've never seen what I'm looking at before. I go, what are you talking about? He says, you appear to have had a natural fusion. He says, it's unheard of. Now, why that happened, who knows? Maybe it was being on my back with a brace. Maybe it was me. I don't know. But the point being, I don't say to patients, don't respect your doctors, but I do say, don't take everything at face value. Now, I could have done something less drastic, but it worked out. So the point is, I challenged the physical limitations and found my way through that. But the emotional impact of that lingered for years. The effect on my confidence lingered for years. So understand that it's an existential impact. It's not just a physical problem. And that if you don't look at what happens to you as a person when this is going on, you're really missing out on tremendous opportunity to heal and recover.
Right, which you definitely do. I want to touch on something. Do you feel that you really, I mean, and especially being such a young person, focused all those years, even through college, just on the physical aspect of, I will persevere, I will move forward?
Yep.
When did your mindset and the emotion kind of come together? Generally, the after effects for most people, right? I found that, in my own trauma situations, it was like a year later, and then maybe 2 more years later, it was the next layer that you didn't know about. So I'm curious how that all came together for you.
Yeah. I've always lived a life that involves going outside my comfort zone. And as you know, if you do that, you're likely to find out things about yourself you don't know, often pleasant surprises, right? So, I went through college and then I went to law school, and becoming a lawyer began to challenge this, right? Because being a lawyer is all about seeking the truth in things. And I knew that I had problems with confidence. I knew that. I managed to get through college and law school by working really hard because I didn't think I was smart. But I did think if I worked hard enough, maybe I could do okay. So that was always dogging my tracks. And I go like, what is that? Right. So eventually I went to therapy. That was helpful. But what really turned the corner was when I decided to just quit everything, which came around age 30. I'd been on the treadmill. I'd done what was expected. I'd become a successful attorney. I had a lot of the attributes people look for. And I'm going like, something missing here. I'm not okay with me. I was fond of telling people I loved myself, but I knew it wasn't true. So it was kind of triggered by my father's death at that point. I just go like, you know what? I've got $800 in the bank. I've got a backpack. I have a friend who lives in Amsterdam. I'm just going to throw myself out in the world and get out from under all the props, right? In those days, no cell phones or computers, right? So I'm out in the world, and I spent months and months and months, and eventually ended up living in Marrakesh and being adopted by a Bedouin tribe. And what I found out when I was out there, nobody cared about me being a lawyer or anything else about me. It wasn't relevant. Most people didn't even know. I was just me. And I found out that I was actually the kind of person I always wanted to be, but I didn't know that. And that included paying more attention to my feelings and realizing that I was naturally empathic with people and making that connection. I just wasn't giving that to myself. So a lot of encounters that challenged my sense of limit, that put me in touch that I was not working through how I felt about it, that I've been traumatized and never ever dealt with it. And then I went to graduate school. Going through graduate school, I had to be in psychoanalysis. I was in psychoanalysis for 15 years. So all of those therapeutic processes, all of the challenges, always looking for ways to be challenged beyond what I know, all led to getting more and more connectivity with me. What really topped it off was actually the working with patients. And spending 10 years working with the chronically mentally ill in the state hospital, working with people that are psychotic will really test who you are and how much you care. And I go like, actually, I do. And actually, I need to get through a lot of these hangups because I don't know if you know about this, but psychotic patients have no filters. And I would sit in a group therapy session with 8 psychotic patients calling me out for stuff I didn't even know I had a problem with. And I said to my supervisor at one point, after about 8 months of this, I said, I think I need to quit this profession because it's incredibly painful to go into these group therapy sessions, right? Because they're coming at me with stuff I don't even know about. And she went, yeah, you can quit, or you can deal with what they're bringing up. You can tell what choice I made. So I think the bottom line for this, in terms of the people that we're talking to in this conversation, is if you give yourself opportunity to challenge what you think you know about yourself, if you give yourself opportunity to step outside your comfort zone, you will discover what I have come to understand is incredible, infinite potential. But you can't get there if you don't become integrated as a person. So I don't know, it's a long answer to your question, but it was a process.
It's a powerful answer, and I adore it. Thank you. And what you just said, so here's the question. It's kind of like a chicken and an egg question. What do you think comes first? Do you take the leap of faith and along the way you find out who you are and you integrate, or do you integrate and then take the leap of faith?
Great question. I think it depends that everybody gets to where they want to go depending on what works best for them. For me, it wasn't about just moving from the more conservative position to the other one. I've always been a risk taker. I've always been interested in what's beyond what I know. But that worked for me. That is not everybody's way of operating. So I think it comes down to really understanding what it takes for you to make changes. What I talk to patients about is I'm not interested in diagnostic labels. I don't think they're that helpful. What I tell people is you got an operating system, right? Everybody develops a way of coping in the world, a way of getting their needs met, being safe, operating system. And you may find that you have an operating system that has some non-user friendly features. So it's not about you're broken, you need to be fixed. It's about upgrading the system. Microsoft doesn't go bad Windows 10. They go Windows 11 is more user friendly.
That is such a powerful statement. And I hope that everyone pauses and rewinds and re-listens because that is what we need more of in this world. You're not bad. You're not, maybe not wrong. You just need an upgrade. Keep
Yeah.
moving forward.
Well, it's true, especially when I came to understand, you probably familiar with the existential immune system. It's in the book.
Mhm. Yes.
Well, it's a very interesting concept because I don't know if you've heard any place that we don't just have a physical immune system, we have a total immune system, emotional, psychological, and existential. Millions of years of evolution, incredible tools, and most humans have no idea. No idea. Any human being that ever tells you that they're helpless and powerless has no idea what they are.
So when you're working, or when you even came to know the existential immune system, how did that come about? Explain to our listeners what it is so that they know, and how do we tap into it?
Okay, great question. The basic way of thinking about this is, would you agree that all human experience is translated into thoughts and feelings?
100% yes.
Everybody knows, right?
Right.
So that tells you thinking and feeling are really important. What they don't know is that thinking and feelings are tools. They're not just an experience. They actually have a functional purpose. And then the next question is, okay, what determines thoughts and feelings? What do you think the answer is?
What determines thoughts and feelings?
These are not fair questions, by the way, but
I know, but you've like stopped me in my tracks. I want everyone to know, so I need to like think for a minute. Thoughts and feelings. I'm thinking my environment, my emotion, how I'm feeling emotionally in that moment.
all part of it. But if you had to have one word to summarize it, what would it be?
My energy,
Perception.
perception.
Yeah. For example, if I was at the scene of a terrible car accident, I'd probably be throwing up. That's why I'm not a physician, right?
Right.
But if I was an EMT, I'd probably be eating lunch while I'm picking up body parts. Same situation, different perception, right? Now,
Right.
the next interesting question is what determines perception?
Yeah, what done? Now you've got me because I'm usually just in host mode. So now I'm really thinking and I love this.
Oh,
What
good.
determines
Okay. Yeah.
perception?
Yeah.
Well, your mind, but it's
Or
deeper than that. It's the programming that you have,
awareness,
awareness.
which encompasses everything you're saying.
Hmm.
You know, all therapy raises consciousness, right?
Right.
You know, think about all the times in your life when you change the way you perceive something because you at a higher level of awareness. The way you see the world as a 5-year-old versus a 15-year-old versus a 25-year-old, right? It changes. So I go, okay, if thoughts and feelings are that important because they define experience, my awareness is going to determine ultimately whether those are serving me as well as they could. Now, if I don't know that those are tools and they have a functional purpose, that's a major problem. For example, did you know that anxiety and anger are the most important human emotions of all?
I have not heard it stated that way, but now that you've stated that, I can understand yes.
Yeah. This
Yes.
is where the journey to answering your question began for me. I'm sitting with patients 20 years ago, right, in a chronic pain management program, which is what I got into almost by accident. Right. I was done with community mental health for a lot of reasons. Wasn't certain of what I wanted to do. I took this job. I was used to working with chronically mentally ill. I figured chronic pain, not so different, right? One of the first things I observed is that people with chronic pain have a lot more anxiety and anger than the average emotional patient in therapy. And initially I'm going like, okay, that's just a lot of suffering, right? The way most people experience those emotions. But I remembered something, some fundamental ideas, like there's a yin and yang to everything. Life's a two-edged sword. Being human, there's always the pluses and the minuses. I go, so
Right.
what possible purpose could these emotions serve other than making you feel miserable, right? And that's when I made a connection. I go like, wait a second. They're having these emotions because their needs are being threatened, right? I began to understand collateral damage, right? This is a concept that is missing in our current understanding. It's not about what happens to you. It's about the meaning you attribute to it, right?
Wait, let's pause there for a moment. Say that again.
It's not about what happens. It's about the meaning that you attribute to it. For
That's
example, let's
yeah.
say you tell me you lost a job. I might have a general idea of how you might feel about that, but for all I know, you don't care about jobs, or maybe jobs define you. What we don't do often enough is go like, what does that mean to you? And what I saw the current model was it was very superficial. Oh, you lost a job. That's terrible. Not what did it mean to you to lose a job? Well, it was my life. Well, if it was your life, then you're nobody anymore. But that's not being treated. So the concept of collateral damages came into this. That made more sense to me that you'd have a lot more anxiety and anger because those are in reaction to a threat to your needs, right?
Right.
That led to analyzing for the last 20 years collateral damages. We're up to 200 potential collateral damages. And that
Well,
evolved into, you know, traditional therapy. They look at negative thinking, right? Self-judgment, that kind of stuff. This took that and exploded it because I realized thinking is the second most important mechanism. And is that working the way it needs to? Sorry, I interrupted you.
oh no, that's okay. I was going to interrupt you. So I wanted to get to the 200 plus collateral damages. I want to make sure that we all understand what you mean when you say that.
Yeah. So, for example, and this was all learned, my patients are great teachers, right? This was all learned in that first 5 or 6 years. I didn't understand that I was going to develop a new model of treatment. That's exactly what happened. But that's not different than what I've done in the past with other things. Let's say that you have an injury, a back problem, whatever. If you look at the book, you'll see sections about physical impact, personal impact, treatment impact, right?
Right.
People don't know that there's major collateral damages. For example, if you have a physical problem, maybe your sleep's disrupted, right? Well, if your sleep's disrupted, that can add 50% to your pain. 50. Not only that, but it undermines your immune system because it's supposed to reboot when you're sleeping. People don't know that. They don't know it's one of the consequences of having that injury. They lose physical conditioning. Well, add another 20% to their pain and interference with recovery because now they get reactivated before they can even benefit from rehab.
Right.
Right. So this started leading into, well, there's a whole lot of things that are happening physically. What's happening personally? Here, just some examples. How important do you think a sense of continuity is in your life? Where you get up every day and things feel fairly continuous?
It
What
is.
happens? What happens when you lose that?
I have to realign. I have to take a moment and
But how do
realign.
you do that when nothing's predictable anymore? You lose continuity and predictability. That is an existential
Yeah.
collateral damage. You lose your sense of identity as a person, existential collateral damage, self-regard, self-esteem, confidence. There's a long list of things that are affected by this. And treatment, there's so many things that can go wrong in treatment, and even more so now post-COVID.
Oh my goodness.
So the book really analyzes, here are the places where you can have a problem. Here's the things you can do to deal with it. But this, over the last 20 years, evolved into understanding that, all right, well, thinking and feeling are that important. What's that all about? And that's when I came to understand that anxiety is basically a fire alarm. You will never feel any level of anxiety unless your needs are being threatened. So you don't ask yourself, why am I anxious? You go, what needs are being threatened? Right? Our mission in life as human beings is to get all our needs met all the time. We have to have a warning system, right? And what about anger? Well, you need to have an action system to take care of the threats. And these emotions do not become unpleasant and destructive unless you don't know how to use them. Anxiety disorders, depression, you name it. This is based on a mismanagement of these emotions, not the emotions. They're not pathological. They're as natural as breathing if you know how to use them.
Okay, so I want to go back because that was very important what you just said. So anxiety and
Anger.
anger, it's emotions that are mismanaged.
Yeah.
So like, it's like getting like what is the root cause of your anxiety? What is the root like getting to the root versus just the topical a doctor wants to give you a pill to help you out?
Yeah, that's why any philosophy or any medical approach that goes get rid of those emotions is making a huge mistake. Huge.
Right. Well, clearly, look at our world.
Yeah. And that's why
Yeah.
when I developed a technique for helping people properly manage these, and I did, there's something called the survival triad. It's a combination of all of the stuff I learned, but it's kind of like the Beatles. You know how the Beatles took everything that was already there in music, but added something to it that was a bit new and unique.
Hmm.
This approach does that. It's founded on all of the traditional approaches, but it goes beyond that.
Okay, so I have to ask then, how does it go beyond that?
Well, I'll give you a quick run through.
Okay, yes, can we?
It starts with
Yours.
you knowing that there's something you're thinking about or doing that's making you feel anxious, right? So you go
Hmm.
like, okay, that's the triggering event. That's what it's called. That's what started this, right? I'm
Right.
thinking about I got snubbed by a friend, right? It's making me feel anxious, right? And then I go like, okay, if I'm having that feeling, I know that thoughts create feelings. So I want to know what I'm thinking about that situation that might be making me feel anxious. And I literally list the thoughts. And it might be, if my friend doesn't like me, maybe I'm not adequate. I'm going to keep this simple, right? Okay, well, and it's making me anxious, let's say at a 6 or 7 on a 0 to 10 scale. The next step is to go, all right, what need does that thought represent? Well, if I'm feeling diminished as a person, that is a threat to my self-esteem. And then I'll go and go, let's talk about what might help you to see that this has nothing to do with your self-esteem. And that if you didn't feel diminished as a person, you might be bothered by the comment, but you wouldn't really care that much. So it's about getting into it. It's about valuing the process of the thoughts and also how that relates to your needs. And then the best part, we have all of this wisdom and knowledge we've acquired, but if you get swept away by anxiety and anger, you can't get to it. You lose access. You're getting ready to fight the bear in the woods where you don't want to be thinking at all, right?
Right.
Which, by the way, if you want to be a really good dictator, make sure you keep your followers always anxious and angry, because then they're not thinking anymore. They're not in connection with what they know.
Gosh, when you say that, I mean, isn't that a lot of our society right now going on?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. But once you know, once you're grounded, it
Hmm.
changes everything. Because if you can address threats to your needs successfully, it changes everything. And so that is one of the main founding principles of the existential immune system, using emotions, and all emotions have a functional purpose. Do you know what the purpose of sadness is?
No, please tell me.
The celebration of loss.
Sorry, I was. So why that is, wow.
Why? Because you and I
No,
both know
oh
if
no,
you
you just
care,
gave me such a validation because I had a major loss before this podcast and I thought the show must go on.
yeah,
And I probably sat and was a disaster for a long time, but it's just what you said. It truly, really is celebrating that person. And when you can have that mindset shift, that's everything.
Yeah. And part of the reason I think of it as a celebration is, you and I know this. You choose to care about anything. Like, why do people care about pets? I mean, it's a bad deal. You get to have that pet for 8, 9, 10, 15 years, and then they die and you suffer, right? You get involved with somebody and you commit for life and you're together for 50 years and they die and then you suffer. Anybody who chooses to love anything is going to be lining themselves up for considerable suffering. So when a person is willing to do that, that's an act of courage, right? We both know what happens if you don't do that, then you don't get to feel any connection or any of that joy in life.
Right.
But I think it's courageous to care. And if you lose because of it, I think that needs to be respected.
I agree with you. I love that you just put courage with love. It's so true because you're putting everything out there. And I feel right now that there's so many people that either do that or completely cannot do that.
Yeah. And love, you want to know what love's for?
Yes, please.
Yes, love's the reason why.
Love is the reason why.
Yeah, that emotion, if you experience that emotion, it's saying this matters. That's how you know. I know some of this may be simplistic, but to be
Oh, I
honest
don't
with
think I disagree. I think this is so weighted and so powerful what you're saying. Simple in words, but if you're really feeling it and listening to you, I think it's incredibly powerful and weighted.
yeah. So the key principles in the existential immune system are you take care of the importance of feelings, which are more important than any other aspect of who you are, by learning how to make use of those feelings properly, knowing what they're for. When it comes to thinking, what you want to eliminate is judgmental thinking, assumptions, rationalizations, magical thinking, belief-based thinking. Look at how dangerous beliefs are in our world. I've been watching the series The Vikings.
Oh, I have not seen that.
It's fascinating. It's ultra violent, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But the Vikings believe that if you sacrifice yourself for the good of the tribe, you go to Valhalla. And I'm going like, that's really interesting because they absolutely believe it, right? You imagine submitting yourself to being killed,
No.
even burned alive, right? But you consider this entree to Valhalla, right? A belief. Now, maybe that's true for all I know. There is a Valhalla, but my point is, you know how dangerous beliefs can be,
Right.
right? So part of the work is to make sure that your thinking is working objectively and addressing the truth. And a lot of the techniques for helping with this kind of thinking, which are a lot of them are traditional, goes like, no, it's not that, right? It's this. All of these approaches using this system will get you to the truth in whatever situation you're dealing with. The third part is conflict resolution, right? Which I don't call resolution, I call it embracement, because conflict is not a problem, it's another tool. It's an opportunity for you and the other person to come together. It's not an argument, it's not a fight unless you don't understand what you're trying to do with it. So get grounded in dealing with your feelings, get grounded in dealing with your thinking, get grounded in your interpersonal relations. And then one of my favorites is called the self-regard rule. You learn to treat your needs as equal to everyone else. You don't make decisions to give up what you need without understanding the price you're going to pay,
That's
right?
super.
And then reviewing a person's childhood in terms of what did it mean to go through a childhood where that was going on. Not a psychoanalytic approach, a meaning-based analysis. Those are the 5 main principles. You put those all together, and it is a incredibly powerful system.
Yeah. Incredibly powerful. What would be your number one tip for helping someone if someone goes, I have no idea how to be grounded in this world today? What would you say to that person to help
I
them?
would say to that person that this is the nature of the human condition, and that if you appreciate that everything, while it may be challenging and distressing, the flip side is it's an opportunity. Every challenge we're facing right now, you think about this, if the world could come together around all of our common problems, we could solve all of it, right? There's no reason why anybody in the world should go hungry or be without shelter or basic needs other than greed and primitive thinking. You want to know what my explanation is for the current state of the world and the
Yes.
craziness we're looking at?
Yes, please.
Yeah, how's that for hubris? I'll give you a simple explanation.
Yes.
It's the cornered rat syndrome. All right. What do we know
Yep.
about animals? When animals are hungry and injured, what happens to their behavior?
Oh, it's
They become aggressive.
They're aggressive and self-serving, right? It's not
Right.
about you, it's about me.
You convince enough humans that they can never get their needs met. They become cornered rats. And what I think happened was this has always been around the disparity, the haves and the have nots, but the rest of the world didn't know it. With the internet and social media, now everybody knows.
Right.
And it's gotten worse. That's why I think people don't understand. You can't rationalize with a cornered rat. You got to feed them first. Now you're going to feed them with empty promises. Where are you going with that? Besides, the Vikings learned this interesting lesson, right? If you look at the Vikings as a show, they used to just go take what they wanted and commit terrible acts of violence to get it.
Right.
Where's Scandinavia today as cultures, as operating countries? They're the safest and most peaceful places in the world. They're the ones who treat their citizens better than anybody else does. I
Isn't
guess
that
they learned their
fascinating?
lesson.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating?
They know.
Yeah.
Americans are childish. They don't understand. They don't get democracy. They don't know it's messy and it's in many ways dysfunctional. What's the alternative? If they understood what it meant to live in a dictatorship, they wouldn't be thinking it's a good idea to get rid of democracy. But
Right.
they're cornered rats, so they're not thinking.
I don't think anyone is thinking. I think even pre-COVID is that I think some people were thinking, but some people were clouded. And since COVID, I just feel like there's this glaze. And I mean, I'd like to think that I'm a pretty open person and I have my eyes wide open. And there's times where I go to say things to people and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that your eyes aren't open. I didn't realize that, I feel like you have to be so careful now with whom you're speaking. One, because you don't want to set anyone off, of course, but two, it really is two worlds I feel like we live in right now.
Think of it this way: the world is in a chronic pain situation, and COVID brought it home for people in a way they couldn't ignore it. They've been trying to ignore global warming and a lot of other problems. They could not ignore COVID, right?
Right.
And the world has yet to recover from the existential shock of that, because what it brought home is nothing's safe anymore. You might have thought you were safe. Nothing's predictable. You think there's always going to be enough water and enough food and enough land. Well, think again, right? We're on the verge of destroying this planet, right? This planet, as far as I can tell, what a gift. Can you imagine a better designed environment to support life? And we're going to take that and through our hubris, we're going to end up re-engineering it in a way that destroys it. Now, not to mention that we have this universe out there that has countless other worlds. Our solar system, it's a garden, it's a paradise. Everything you need is out there. And what we're going to do, kill each other instead?
I agree. Yeah.
But it's a chronic pain problem, right? And if you don't address the fact that things have changed for people in ways they can't handle, if they don't evolve the way they're coping with that, what the world hasn't done yet is figure out a different way to cope with these major problems. They're falling back on old techniques.
Right. In a new world and it's not working.
That's right.
Okay, so the president of the universe has come to you and said, what should we do? These poor people, what do we do?
Oh, I've got an answer for that one too.
Yeah, I know you do. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I've been promoting this for a very long time. I'm a big science fiction fan, as you might guess. I've been saying to people for a long time, we need to get them off planet. Humans are too primitive. We can't live successfully in large numbers. It doesn't work. Cities are a disaster, right? We need space, right? We had the new world to come to here, but that's gone. There is no new world on this planet, right? There's nothing that is unaffected by what's going wrong in the world. Get off planet, reduce the population by 50%, have people start populating other places, have opportunity and frontiers and new discoveries. That's the hope of the human race. As long as we try and figure it out here, it's not going to happen fast enough.
So when you say that, are you thinking like, let's just go Star Wars, right? Or maybe there's another beautiful planet. Maybe there's a sister Earth, sister Earth. So are you saying like, let's split people in half and send some people that want to go over to sister Earth? Or are you thinking like, let's just really depopulate and call it a day?
No, I think I would want to say to people, look, I get that you no longer think you have opportunity on earth to have what you need in life, but there are places where you can make your own way. just people did in this country. They came and they got land, they built what they
Right.
wanted to do. Say your opportunity to have what you want isn't necessarily here, but it could be out there.
Okay, so I'm going to go down another rabbit hole. So, like right now, and I'm going to say allegedly because I don't really know if this is true, but somewhere in our current world, there's being a bridge that is being built to help people get to the United States easier that are not American citizens. Would you suggest if the United States isn't for you, it's a big world, there's plenty of islands, like really expand because there's some people that don't leave their mile radius, right? You get comfortable in your, and I've been that person. You get comfortable in your little zone. Would we start there to help people before they, or are we just going for it? We need people to expand.
I think of it a little bit differently. It's like saying to people, look, I get it. I understand why you don't believe you can get what you need on this planet. That things, what I learned working in the state hospital, that I made a lot of changes and I kept fighting good battles, but I couldn't change the institutional structure. And I'm basically saying, I don't think the structure of the way this planet operates and the way humans interact supports the kind of opportunity that you're really looking for. And who is it? The guy that from SpaceX?
Oh, Elon?
Thank you, Musk. Well, he offered the opportunity to go to Mars. Do you know how many people signed up for it? 200,000. There were plenty of people on this planet. If you said, look, if you want a better life, you want opportunity, you want more empowerment in your life, maybe you can get it here, right? That's where Shark Tank comes in, right?
Right.
Which is kind of the other end of the spectrum. Or go someplace where you can make your own rules, where you can make your own way, where nobody's competing with you for resources. Because that was America when we started. You could just, you didn't like where you were, go someplace else.
Right.
You know, I'm leaving aside the native population issue. That's a different story. So that's basically the idea that you tell people that there's a choice. If you think the only opportunity you have to get what you need is on planet Earth, I understand why people don't believe that anymore.
Interesting. Oh, my mind is just spinning right now. Spinning. Because then you go to the philosophy of where did you really come from? And maybe it's time to go home.
Maybe so. And that's always fun to think about. And that may well be true, but it's more about we live in an infinite universe, right?
Right.
You have all of these worlds that can support life. You know, people go like, what's it all about? Why are we here? I think we're here to have fun. I think we're here to have fun by discovering things and being inspired and taking on challenges that promote personal growth. You know, we talk about people achieving enlightenment. What is that? As far as I can tell, what that means is that I feel at peace with myself, no matter what's going on. I may be troubled by things. I am never troubled about me. And that was a long, long journey to get from where I started at 12 and a half to truly loving myself. But once that came to pass, everything changes.
How do you discern when you are at peace within while the world around you is in chaos? Because there's a lot of people that I feel don't know what that feels like, that grounded, aligned, like,
Right,
okay, I see
right.
what's going on with the world around me. I am safe. I'm okay. I'm aware. But am I really in that chaos or am I just viewing it? Like, how do you help someone to understand that it is okay to be grounded and to be within themselves at that? Well, because right
Well,
now that's like every day, it seems like.
yeah, and I have an awareness of all of that. But one thing I've learned to do is I don't really think about things that don't serve me in the moment. I don't anticipate the future or think about the past unless it's of value now. A lot of chronic pain patients anticipate the future or dwell on the past. It's not helpful. I'm aware. I am not ignorant of what's going on and what could down the drain. As a matter of fact, I'm acutely aware of what could go wrong. And it's going to go wrong one way or the other. Just depends on how bad it's going to be. But
Agreed.
it's also a wake up call because I think that I don't want to be too political here, but let's just put it this way. I learned growing up that when you're a citizen, you have a responsibility. I don't know if that's still being taught in school. It doesn't look like it has been. All right. This idea that people don't think the vote has power. Well, what's under attack, right? Why do you think that's been under attack? The idea that voting is legitimate, because that's the one place you can assert your power in a big country. So you're aware of things, but being centered just means I'm aware. In the martial arts, especially when you get up in the higher ranks where it gets more and more dangerous. The first thing you learn in the martial arts is how to center, how to be present in the moment. Nothing's getting in the way. The emotions are there, but they're not interfering. The thinking's not interfering. You mostly want to react and be as intuitive as you can be. People don't trust that. They think too much. They think in ways that aren't helpful. They don't know how to manage their feelings. And then they're being addressed by all of these threats. Well, no wonder it becomes a Tower of Babel.
Exactly. Exactly. How, I don't want to say this, in helping someone who's going, okay, this has been an incredibly powerful conversation because it holds a lot of weight for what everyone is going through in the world right now, regardless in one way or another. Somebody's feeling something from this podcast.
Right.
Where should they begin in this moment in time to ground and master their emotions?
Well, that's a big question. Part of it depends on where they are. A lot of people may already have skills. I certainly had opportunity being a lawyer. I learned a lot of those skills. Martial arts, absolutely. Being a psychologist, right? Being a psychologist, if you're going to be good at it, you have to be able to be present and centered and not entangled in reaction, right? So I think number one, where are you to begin with? Are you even a person who understands that you could do that? A lot of people don't get that. They often struggle with the techniques that I use because you have to get focused and centered first before you actually get into the good stuff and the techniques. And people get impatient really fast, right? So if you understand that if you can be calm in the storm. Did you ever see a movie called We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily recommending it, but it's an earlier Mel Gibson movie. He plays the leader of the first troop of soldiers that were sent into Vietnam. And for some odd reason, they dropped these soldiers behind enemy lines. And they encountered the equivalent of, Custer's last stand. They were surrounded, they were cut off, help is not going to get them soon enough. And I'm sure it was Hollywood, but there's this great scene where the bullets are flying, the bombs are going off, people are dying, and Mel Gibson's standing in the middle of all of this, literally standing, like he's on a sunny day, looks completely calm, and he's just observing, not thinking, he's observing. And in observing, he sees something, and he sees the way out, and he ends up saving the truth, right? When we're confronted by threats, we're going to react to them. If you know how to manage your emotional reaction to it, your thinking reaction to it, you can stay in the center. These techniques get you centered, they get you grounded, they allow you to get into it. You don't want to avoid it, you want to get into it. You want to embrace it. And I know there's lots of things in life people don't want to look at or face, but if you don't, it does not help. Right. So it starts with where you are. It starts with whether you really understand the value of doing that. And with all of my patients, that becomes an issue very quickly. And there's different practices. I'll help people get into Qigong, Tai Chi, meditation, other kinds of practices they can do that will help to encourage that process. But frankly, sitting in a session with me, if you don't get centered, you're not going to benefit from it. So it's kind of a learning process.
That sounds amazing. Who wouldn't, after this conversation, be knocking down your door for a session? You should have a wait list after this podcast for sure.
Well, to be candid about this, a lot of this is educational. I mean, we're having a conversation. You can benefit from having just heard some of the ideas of it, right? So what we've done is we have something we're going to be launching in the fall, a self-study program. So I did videos with my partner on the entire model. We did a workbook to go along with the book and also other helpful materials. So what you're going to do now is you'll do the self-study, right? The book's out there and that's useful, but a workbook makes it even easier, right? And then videos. And then you're going to come to live webinars, which we're going to launch in September. Think of it this way. You might get to being from a white belt to a green belt doing self-study, but the nuances and the finesse of this you get into by coming to these live webinars. Those are like brown belt, black belt seminars, because a lot of this can be conveyed through education. People do not need to be my patient as a therapist for them to benefit from this model. I've already worked with a lot of people purely on consulting and education, not therapy. It is by definition therapeutic, But just so people know, you don't have to see me as a therapist to benefit from this approach. You don't have to live in the state that I'm licensed in. If I'm consulting or we're doing educational work, I don't care where you are. Doesn't matter. None of those limitations exist. And this approach is so powerful because remember, I've seen over 2,500 patients. I have a huge sample set, no experimental findings, but anecdotally, this works. And it works better than anything I've ever encountered. And that's why if you look at the book, you'll see some very important physicians endorse the book.
Incredible physicians endorse your book. And
Yeah.
there's
So
one, actually speaking, you segued perfectly into this. Thank you, Alan. There's a quote, and it's in your book and on the outside of the book, and it says, "It is more important to know what sort of patient has a disease than the sort of disease the patient has."
yep,
And this is a well-known doctor who said this is exactly the kind of person that you are. And I think that this is exactly what we need in our world today. It's what we've always needed. And now I feel we're finally ready for it. We're also in desperate need of that, of people, as we've been speaking, looking at a person as a whole, body, mind, and spirit, not just the pain that you're in.
that's right.
Mhm.
But the point I really want to make about this is look, it's a journey. And I will tell people, look, you know what? If you don't like the idea of self-discovery and self-exploration and personal evolution and upscaling your operating system, don't even get started.
Right.
But
Yeah.
understand that even though it might take a while to get to that, there'll never be a session where you don't benefit from it.
Hmm.
It's like martial arts. There's no workout that doesn't help. Even if you're a white belt and it's going to take years to get to black belt, there's no wasted effort. So, but remember what I'm getting at. If we are what I think we are, creatures of incredible potential, much of which we haven't even learned. The physician within. Do you know Gladys McLary?
Hmm.
Have you seen 103-year-old doctor? Right?
Amazing. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I just recently discovered her, but that's her approach is the physician within. I actually believe that we don't need medicine, that we actually have the ability to do those things, but our society, Western culture, does not focus on evolving those spiritual gifts. They don't evolve knowing it. And think about this one last thought on this. That existential immune system includes every attribute of being a human being. For example, smiling. From an existential point of view, what's the value in smiling?
Oh, it's contagious. It's
It's also
wonderful.
transformational.
Hmm.
Just smile right now and see what happens. It changes everything. We have all these attributes as a human being that are incredibly powerful, right? And we don't appreciate that that's part of our tools. And if we know how to use them properly, how do we use optimism or pessimism? Does that work? Right? Any attribute of being human is a potential tool to be made use of. But most people don't think of it that way. Once you understand that and you go like, I've almost died 5 times in my life, not just broken neck. Interestingly, they're all associated with water. But
Hmm.
each time I found out that I had more to go than I knew. The martial arts, it says to you basically, you don't know your limits. Now, if you're interested in finding out what your limits are, you have to engage. You have to get onto the mat and actually try. People who have chronic pain, and I think this model applies to any chronic suffering, not just physical pain, they're afraid to get on the mat. You get them on the mat, you get them to engage, you get them to contend. You help them to understand they're not one trick ponies, that whatever you used to be and could be, that does not define you, right? Your self esteem has nothing to do with who you are. That is a gift from your system. Self love is not conditional. We make it conditional, but it isn't conditional. So I
Right.
want people to get that if you truly connect to who you really are and what you are, and we do this, right? We look at people that overcome challenges. Stephen Hawking, right? How do you do
Hmm.
that? How do you do what he did, right? We look at shows, they're always showing people that overcome, but people don't get it. We're all that person.
Alan, this has been amazing. This is definitely one of the podcasts for the VIP section, the one that you always want to keep on and go back to every day, because I feel like there's going to be a new nugget that you're going to embrace in that next day when you're more prepared for it and dive deeper and dive deeper. I can't thank you enough. This has been so amazing. Will you share with our community your book and where they can get it and where they can connect with you?
Yeah, the best opportunity would be go to the website, newoptionsinc.com. That'll connect you to other podcasts I've done, a lot of information about the approach, and directly connect you to Amazon. That's where the book is. And also it will be announcing upcoming events that, like I said, anybody from anywhere can hope to participate in. Like I said, remember the opportunity here is to learn. You don't have to necessarily think of it as just working with a therapist. I think it's a huge difference.
I agree with you 100%. And it's just the well-roundedness, and the book is amazing. So let's see here if I can get it here. There we go. A little picture. The book is New Possibilities, Unraveling the Mystery and Mastering Chronic Pain. And this is not a book to just go, I'm going to sit down and read. This is you're digesting this. This is a novel. This is like the movie of all movies that you want to sink your teeth in and just ground into that moment with what you're reading and ruminate on it. And so I do feel, and for all of my spiritual practitioners that are out there, it's definitely a book that you want to have on your shelf for sure, and to help open up your consciousness one more step.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. I worked for 7 years on that book, went through about 3 editors and a lot of iterations. I wanted it to be readable, but I also recognized it introduces so many new ideas that takes a long time to digest, which is why we're doing this more intensive approach, because that'll move things along a lot more rapidly for people. But I really appreciate the feedback.
Absolutely. Well, as we close out the show today, Alan, is there one last piece of advice or inspiration that you would like to leave with us all?
Be grateful for being alive. I get up every morning, I go, oh, okay, I'm alive. Everything else is cool. It's all gravy beyond that. Appreciate it, right? As long as you're alive, there's possibilities, right?
Endless possibilities.
Yeah. So that would be my sort of final advice.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And again, thank you for your time today. Thank you for all your 7 years into this book that is amazing, and definitely will stand the test of time without doubt.
Cool. And thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Alan. All of Alan's information will be over in the show notes on jenniferpilates.com. So we'll have the links to the book, to his website, so that you can get in touch and you can enjoy opening and expanding your subconscious even more than we already have done today. So, as we say, until next time, may you live an empowered life from within.
Amen to that.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Empowered Within with Jennifer Pilates. Your feedback is important. It helps me to connect with you and gives me insight into who you are and what you're enjoying about the show. For today's show notes and discount codes from today's sponsors, head over to jenniferpilates.com. Until next time, may you live an empowered life from within.